are live, you guys, and I am just grateful for this person because you know how they say another sister from a different mister, different ways. But I'm gonna let her introduce herself because you either know her or you're gonna know her. So go ahead, girl.
Well, I appreciate that. It's an amazing intro. So my name is Briana Palmer. I go by Bree. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Brand Marketing Group. We are a artist branding, marketing, and production company based out of Atlanta. And we also have recently, about a year ago, we expanded to our 360 photo booth as well.
Okay, you hear that, Atlanta? Right, Atlanta, 360 photo booth, and you're just doing big things. So we are in 2024. What is your word?
Hmm. Probably like shift is probably
Oh,
going to be the word of 2024.
okay. And why
Leaning
is
toward,
that?
I think so. Okay, well, let me back up. So I know for a fact the last 12 months, God has been very intentional. He's been very kind to me. I think I'm stepping into a season where I'm seeing like the fruit of my labor. And I think as I continue to kind of focus on that and step into that and be prayerful and intentional with it, a shift has definitely occurred in a bunch of different ways, from a shift in the professional environment to a shift in the company. And like, as we transition, as things just change, as people come and go. But then a shift personally as well. I definitely feel like there are things and even people that have removed themselves, or God has removed them from my life and made space for others, that I'm very thankful that He is trusting me with that friendship and, in whatever capacity it looks like. So I think definitely shift.
Yeah, so you touched on all that, and she is definitely a sower. Okay, sower in every aspect. So this shift, I'm excited for you, and those like intentional vacancies that we normally
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh my God, but God's like, I have to create space for more.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
really excited for that. And even talking about your faith walk and dreaming to follow your passion as an entrepreneur, how has that, you talked about it about these past 12 months, but just in general, how has that journey of trusting God in the faith walk as an entrepreneur, as a, we'll dive deeper into that of you being a student, but let's say as an entrepreneur, how's that faith walk?
I think I've never really had an issue like
Mm,
surrendering my will to God's. That's been something that I've always been very okay with, within reason. I've always been very okay with, because I haven't wanted to ever will my way into something. Because it's like when you do that, you're in chaos. Like you created this, you're gonna deal with it. And I think a lot of times we're like, why is this so hard? Well, even things that
right.
God ordained has to be maintained. So if he's like, I ain't tell you to do that. You made a hard left and I told you to keep on pushing. Of
Of
course it's
course.
gonna be chaotic, So I've had to definitely work on listening intently and just straight up asking God, like, hey, make it plain. I heard you. I don't understand it. So I need you to make this plain. And I think that's kind of helped with that walk of faith. Because ultimately, like, faith without works is dead. And it's like, I'm working anyway. So
Right.
if I'm out here, the devil gonna try me anyway, and I'm working anyway. So if those two things are gonna happen regardless, I might as well be covered and have faith throughout that process.
Right. That part. You, it's gonna happen. Like the battle's gonna happen. You talked about that. I'm gonna add that to my prayer. Like, God, make this make sense.
Yes, literally make it plain. Like, because I heard you, I saw the dream, I heard the sign, but like, I don't want to fumble the bag. Like, and I think that's so easy for us to do. But at the same time, like, God doesn't give you things you're not prepared for. Like, He's not going to give you a blessing for you to mess it up. So
Right.
I remember a year ago, my boyfriend was praying for provision. Like, yes, we want the thing, all these things that we're asking you for, but we also want the provision and the wisdom to maintain them. So it's like, if I feel like, okay, I'm cool. I might not know where we're going, but I got keys, I got a car, we're gonna get there.
You can get there, right? You can get there. You can give us the steps. So definitely, how did you just navigate those mountain periods, those valleys, those step by steps, just creating your own lane? Because she didn't really dive deep into that, but she has her own lane. So tell us more about creating that lane and just navigating through those mountain and valley periods, the different seasons, because sometimes it's not easy.
No, life be life in. I think two-part answer. So I would say right now, the word is God's timing. So whatever it is, it's in his timing. Like, I keep hearing that, I keep saying that, kind of like unprovoked, and like it's almost like a reflex. Like, something left will happen, I'll be like, oh, God's timing. And I'm like, okay. So I think right now we're there. And that has kind of helped me figure out how I want to move from point A to point B, what makes the most sense, what makes the most sense for the company. But I think 6 months ago, a year ago, it was like, God didn't bring you this far to leave you here. So I think once I started, because honestly, going back to 2 years ago, when we first were kind of talking about the idea of expanding the company to a 360 photo booth, that was scary for me. It just was what it was, because
Yeah.
everything up until that point came out of my head one way or the other. It's like, I'm directing a photo shoot, or I'm behind the production team of a music video, I'm writing an artist bio, I'm connecting two people together, whatever that looked like, but it was
Yeah.
a work that I could, for the most part, have my hands on. The 360 booth, it's like, people are going to buy this or they're not, like one way or the other. And that was scary to me. But I knew that, and part of, I've also kind of started to underline this point in this semester of school, but I have a why. And most
Yeah.
companies don't start with a why. They start with I want to sell hamburgers, or I want to sell clothes, or whatever that looks like. I started with a why.
Mhm.
So I know I want to give creatives a space to create. I want them to have that ability where it's obtainable and accessible, and they have the autonomy to make mistakes, go back and forth, feel comfortable, get exposure that's not a get exposure in an environment where they don't have to prove themselves. Because I feel like Black culture, we haze. And I feel like it's one thing to have someone show you what they're made of. It's another thing to torment someone to the point where they're not sure this is what they want anymore. And I feel like you shouldn't play with people's anointings and people's dreams like that.
No.
So I
Yeah,
think
you gotta show up.
yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think because I started with that why, it made forging whatever the peak was, of course, the peaks are great. The peaks is what you share on social media. People don't see when it's rough and life be life in, and you're trying to really make it happen or figure it out, or you have to say no to a client that might be, beneficial, whether it's exposure wise or financially, who knows? But because I can keep going back to that why, it helps endure whatever that valley looks like.
So that's all good. Like the alignment of delay is not denial and
Yeah.
understanding your why. It's a why, I guess why is not a mission statement. It's not a vision statement. It's more of purpose, right? Your
Yeah,
passion for that
absolutely.
drive.
Absolutely.
And I guess, how did you know about your why? Or when was that point where you're like, this is my why? And I can stand firm on that. I know it shifts. Like I know it shifts for me, but
Hmm.
knowing and establishing that why.
Um, so I've been working in the industry for years. I started in 2017, and that's not that long ago, but for my age, that's a fair amount of time to be in that industry. And I think I
So let's pause and be transparent. We're not gonna tell your age, but God is good.
God is good. God is good. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think I watched certain things on the back end of the music industry because, they say it's 90% business and it's 10% music. And honestly, I would say it's less music than that. Especially during this COVID era where like the idea of reaching people became more of a romanticized version of the culture versus like being able to have those experiences. Um, I think I saw certain things be difficult.
Mm,
I was like, when I first started doing publishing and I would get to see certain artists' spreadsheets of what they owed the label versus if they owe the label this, they're not making any money off of their music. And I just watched like I'm like, wow, this is smoke and mirrors. Like I heard y'all say it was smoke and mirrors, but like I saw him in a G-Wagon, but he owed y'all 250,000. Like make it make sense. So once I kind of started to see the true pitfalls of the industry, I was like, wow, somebody should do something about it. And at that point, it was kind of like a fleeting thought. But a couple years later, fast forward, well, 4 or 5 years later, fast forward to 2020, I was working for a different label and I had a very interesting boss at the time. And, I credit him to a degree
yeah.
I credit him with me developing thicker skin and being able to stand on, like I said, what I said in a male dominant industry. So I think at that point I was doing it already. And, one day he asked me, he was like, how are you going to leave your mark on this industry? And I was like, well, I'm going to be an entertainment attorney. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to be the kind of attorney that does shake the table and I'm immersed in the culture. I'm not just behind the desk. And he was like, okay, that's cool. But what else? And so at that point, I was getting freelance work. I had been getting freelance work anyway. So at that point, I was like, why am I still punching somebody else's clock, coming home in tears, taking borderline verbal abuse for something for a talent that I possess? Like I might as well take this and run with it. And I did. And, like I said, God has been very kind to us throughout that process.
That's so good. Ma'am, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So we dive into more of, so, you know, you have some bosses that give you advice, but what are, like I said, your top three pieces of advice about the importance of just strategic partnerships for any industry and just being clear as a boss woman of God, as a CEO, as just a individual who is making impact not only for this generation but just changing the culture. So what are some top three advice about just those strategic partnerships to creating your own lane?
I think number one, and Kenny Leon said this, not to me, but I was at a meeting and he was speaking generally. And he was like, if you know what you know and you're good at it, it'll work out. And that's a fact. And I'm like, if you and for me, I looked at that as like a religious aspect, like if you know what you know, like God is there, so it's going to work out. And side note, you can't fast your way into it. You can't force your way into it. Just because you fast and don't mean God gonna show up. That's not how he works. He shows up because that's who he is.
Right
So
on time.
right, literally. So that's number one. Like
Yeah.
you have to know that if it's yours, it's going to work out, regardless of what the money looks like, regardless of what the clientele looks like, it's gonna work out. Number two, and this is kind of a newer one, not every problem is a cash problem. And that's something and when that kind of hit me, I was like, oh, okay, got it. Because I think as entrepreneurs,
One
we
punch
think,
fire is like, explain.
right, right. Like not, so especially in like the startup phase of a business, right? Like you very well might be funding yourself. You might not have completely, quit your 9 to 5. Maybe you have some angel investors, like things like that. Not every problem is a cash problem. The issue is not always because you can't afford it, or the issue is not always because you don't see your projections leading this way. A lot of times it can be you. It can be the people that are involved. It can be a timing thing. It can just be a lapse of judgment. It can even be we made the best decision that we thought for our company, and it just didn't work out the way we thought it would. It didn't kill us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it hurt. It probably hurt us financially and hurt our pride, but we're still here because we're chasing this why. So I think though, and then okay, so then that dives into partnership. And I think the partnership goes past who is considered on your board or is a CEO or is whatever. Everybody that you're keeping in your inner circle is now a partner of this business ultimately.
Right.
Because people say like don't worry about, your friends buying whatever you're selling or, investing in your company, worry about the strangers. But I would hate to be in an environment that I can't bounce ideas off of the people around me, or I can't speak on something I'm excited about because you think I'm bragging, or I can't speak on something that I want to do that I have intentions to do, like I've built up the grit to do, and you have nothing but negative things to say and what you think and what you heard on Instagram, when all I really needed was a girl. Good for you. I'm happy for you. Let's pray about it. Does that make sense? Whatever. Like, I'm all for like critique me all day, poke holes in what I just said, but do it with a genuine heart, So I think all of those things combined, like if you are aware that, hey, this is going to work out, if you're aware, hey, let's not always focus on the money. Does this make sense? Where is this going to put us? Does this person align with the why? Because plenty of people will come by and want to join the vision, especially when you up, right? Like if you are, and we've been there before, like if you are taking photos in front of the step and repeat, you got the nice bag, people in the room know who you are, everybody's like, oh, I'm trying to, it's giving Deion Sanders in Colorado. Like it's given, and don't get me wrong, we are now a Colorado household since September as well. But it's like if people will come and want to jump in, but it's like, are you willing to do this work? Are you willing to not get paid for a month? Are you willing to jump in this car and drive 6 hours or whatever that looks like? So I think, that coupled with faith and discernment, help you navigate your own lane, help you be intentional about partnerships, because not all money is good money. Not all partnerships are good partnerships, no matter what you think you're going to get out of them. So, I think it's important to be able to know like, hey, this might not be a money issue. Hey, this is going to work out. Hey, let me make sure this feels right. And I think typically if you do those things, the business stuff will come behind it. Like, what you want, like, if you're looking for capital, you're looking for capital or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All fall in line. Like it will. That's
Absolutely.
something I have to remind myself, like it will, fall in line from one entrepreneur to the next. That motivational aspect is all good things. So I always love to ask this question. Let's talk about self-love, even during, it's any season, but even like as an entrepreneur, how do you balance that? And she didn't really dive into it, but she's a full-time student. Okay. So, Bree, how do you balance just being an entrepreneur, but then also a full-time student and just find time for yourself, So tell us more.
Personally, it's something I still work through because I also still work full-time. I have not let go of my 9 to 5 yet.
Okay.
So number one, I have a great support system. That's for sure. I'm able to, I don't want to say hand things off, but like delegate certain things to other people that I can rest easy knowing that it will be done well and efficiently. Outside of that, I'm in therapy. I think everybody should be in therapy. We all have trauma. People are like, nothing happened to me, whether it's trauma with a capital T or a lowercase t, we all have it. So, having someone just to work as a sounding board that kind of just helps, part the Red Sea, like let's figure this out, let's make it make sense, is important. And she often reminds me like, hey, work-life balance is important, because I can go hard. Like literally in a pay period, I might clock 120 hours at my 9 to 5. and then come home and work, and then come home and do class or whatever. So finding that work-life balance and assuring that I have time to be kind to myself, regardless of what that looks like. And for me, that used to be going to get my hair done, going to get my nails done, going to TJ Maxx, all of that. Like that I felt kind to me.
Right.
Scrolling on Amazon felt kind to me. But now that we're in the process of trying to buy a home, I have to discipline. I have to be really disciplined about what am I spending extra money on. So now it's turned into spending quality time with the people that I'm working so hard I'm working so hard for, which is my family and my future family. So making sure I spend that time, making sure I take, even if it's 5 minutes a day, to be by myself, to be in quiet and just be,
Yeah.
allowing myself that time to feel whatever I need to feel in that moment. Like I'm on a kickball team, and it's just an hour once a week with people that I know well enough, but don't know the ins and outs of my life. They kind of see Instagram and they see me once a week. And that's
You.
just enough. Right. Literally, I'm like, that is just enough. I'm outside, it's fresh air. And when I slack on those things is when life be life. Because something's going to fall through the cracks. If I'm overwhelmed and stressed, something is going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah, and it happens. Well, that's good. Like all the things, just really learning how to be kind to yourself in every shift, every different dynamic, right?
Yeah.
That's key. That's so key. And final question, anything else you'd like to share? Your social media links, how can clients, even those, connect with you in the future, get a 360 photo booth, something?
Yeah. So our Instagram is the Brand Marketing Group. THEBRAND Marketing Group. Feel free to reach out on Instagram. That's a great way to kind of see what we're about, get a taste of what's going on. You'll find links to our website, which is thebrandmg.com. There's our business phone number. That's the quickest and fastest way to get in touch with us. And we like people to kind of have a taste of who we are as a company. So that's a great way to hit us up, get in touch. If you want to book the 360, a photo shoot, anything, it's a kind of a one-stop shop.